Well, man, I'm excited about this series that we're going to be starting. We just wrapped up a series called Unleashed, and we got a 2-week series now that we're going to start called Mint Condition. And we're going to look at the conditions of our hearts. And let me just translate what we're talking about. This 2-week series is going to be a conversation about money. I'm going to pretend that wasn't sarcasm. If you missed that online, the place just erupted in loud applause, and people are standing and chanting and cheering. More sermons about money, more sermons, right? No, hey, I know some of you right off the bat, I know as soon as you hear, oh, the preacher's going to talk about money. I know what's going through your head right now. Tell me I'm not lying. You're thinking this: I wish he'd just mind his business. Mind your business. Anybody want to admit to just thinking that right now? Well, here's what I've done passive-aggressively. I've titled my sermon, Mind Your Business. That's what we're going to talk about today, because I do want to have a conversation about finances. Every few years at Harvester Christian Church, we talk about the area of money, and we do it unashamedly because this is an area that many people in our culture, though uncomfortable with, struggle with. And so if we believe that God is God over everything, then this is one of those areas that we make sure that we're purposeful about having the conversation. So over the next 2 weeks, we're going to talk about finances, specifically as it relates to the condition of our heart and what has been minted onto our heart. And today we're going to talk about mind your business, because I know that's how we usually approach that kind of conversation. In fact, we usually approach many of those kinds of personal conversations that way. I have a confession to make. I often say mind your business a lot to people in my inner circles without saying it out loud. For example, golfers in the room, anybody just love golfing? Really good at golfing? I don't like you. I like going golfing without you next to me, because anytime I go golfing with somebody who knows what they're doing, they feel like they have to spend the entire 18 holes fixing me and my swing. They're like, well, if you would just more like your problem is this. And I'm just thinking the whole time, just mind your stinking business. I'm going to hit you with this plywood. No, I should be using an iron. I don't know. So just like mind your business. Just let me lose on my own. That's what's fun for me, is going through the woods. I also think mind your business when it comes to other personal areas like my marriage. Anytime some guy comes up to me and says, now, if your wife was my wife, this is what I would do. And I'm like, dude, mind your business. This is my wife. Or my kids. Anytime someone comes to me like, well, here's what school your kids should be in. I'm like, mind your business. Like, the reason we say mind your business is typically because somebody's putting their nose into our personal business, right? And none of us like that. None of us like somebody else's nose in our business. And you know why? It's because we're great Americans. That's why. Like, we are independent. We are an independent people. This weekend, what are we celebrating? Independence Day. The day we looked at Britain and said, mind your business, right? We said, like, take your tea, take your taxes, and just mind your business. We're independent. In fact, I was talking to a pastor friend of mine from Arizona. His name's Ashley, and he was showing me this coin that he has, and it's America's first minted coin. It's called the Fujio penny, and this is what it looks like. It was the very first coin minted in America, and it was created after America had proclaimed independence from Britain, and Ben Franklin actually designed this coin. It was our way of letting Britain know that, you know what, we don't need your money, we don't need you, we're on our own. And I love what was minted onto the coin. It wasn't the phrase, in God we trust, it was this phrase, mind your business. Right on the coin. Like, how much more American can you get than that? I was saying, this is mine. Like, our finances, our money is mine. And that's the way we started, and so many hundreds of years later, I got a feeling that's where many of our hearts still are when it comes to finances. We look at the rest of the world, we look at people, and we're like, just mind your business when it comes to finances. Many of us, if you're willing to admit it, even Christians, will look at God and say, God, mind your business. What areas of your life do you tell God to mind his business? A lot of us, it's not very many areas. I mean, if we love God, then we know this. We're like, God, I love you, and I'm going to give you all of my heart. I'm going to give you all of my soul. I'm going to give you all of my strength, all of my mind. I'll even give you some of my time. But God, when it comes to my finances, Respectfully, sir, mind your business. This is mine. I'm going to do what I want with this, and God, you just need to get your nose out of my business. Now, this has been my experience with God in all areas of faith and all areas of life. Any place I let God mind my business is a place where I'm much healthier. Any place I let God into my business, much healthier for me. Now, I'll tell you this right off the bat. We are not a health and wealth church. We will not preach, because it is not in the gospel, that if you give God your money, then he will give you blessings in return. That if you give God money, then he will heal you in return. We are not a give God money so that he can do things for you in return church. I don't believe that's in the Bible anywhere. But here's what I do believe. I do believe that anytime we allow God into any area of our life, we do get healthier in that area of our life. When you let God into your marriage will get healthier. When you let God into raising your children and your relationship with them will get healthier. When you let God into your finances, I believe that they will get healthier. Now, I am not saying that you can't get wealthy without God. You can get wealthy without God. I'm just not sure that your wealth can be healthy without God. You can get wealthy without God, but I don't think your wealth can be healthy without God. Some of you know that to be true. Some of you are sitting here today. Now, I know this isn't everybody, but some of you are sitting here today and you have more money than you have ever had in your life, and you are still unhappier than you've ever been in life. And for those of you who are in that situation, or maybe you're in a different situation, it might be time to let God mind your business. It might be time to let God mind your business. So what I want to do today is I just want to talk some biblical principles when we're talking about how to let God mind your business. And I want to give you two specific biblical principles. And they're going to have to do with some changes that we may need to make when we approach God in the area of finances. And the first one is this, is to change your mentality. Change your mentality. Change the way that you view the things that you have in your possession, in your resources, in your finances. And this is the change I want you to make. God owns it, I manage it. You got that? Everybody say it with me. God owns it. It's his. God owns it, and I just manage it. Now, if you want to go on a path of health when it comes to your finances, this is the mentality that you need to shift to, because this mentality will change the way that you view your finances. In fact, I want to give you a switch of a way of asking questions when it comes to your finances. Two questions. This is the question that we typically ask ourselves when it comes to finances. How should I spend my money? God, how should I spend my money? If you want to go on a journey of health when it comes to your finances, change your mentality to this kind of question. God, how should I spend your money? God, how should I spend your money? Now, how does that shift in mentality make for healthier finances? This is how it makes for healthier finances. Because here's what I know about you. You are better at treating other people's stuff well and wisely, better than you are at treating your own things well and wisely. For example, if you've ever borrowed somebody else's car, I guarantee you that you've driven that car nicer than you drive your own car. Like, you clean up, you don't leave junk in the back of the car, there's no McDonald's wrappers underneath their thing, you're not spinning the tires, you're not slamming on the brakes, you're treating other people's stuff better than you treat your own. Okay, maybe not cars, maybe kids. Anybody watch somebody else's kids and they said something that, like, if that was my kid, they'd get a spanking right now. Like, we often will treat other people's kids more kindly and politely and generously than we treat our own kids. Some of you work at a place where the company has entrusted to you, like, the company MasterCard. And they're like, this is our money, but we're going to entrust that to you. We're going to let you steward it. We're going to let you manage it. And I guarantee you, when you spend the company's money, you ask yourself a whole lot more questions than you do when you pull out your own personal card. The reality is, we treat other people's stuff better than we treat our own things. What if you looked at your stuff as somebody else's stuff? How wisely would you treat it then? How would that change the decisions you make when it came to spending your money? When you looked at your bank account and says, this is all God's. God, how would you have me spend your money? I guarantee you that you would see healthier decisions. You would see wiser decisions on the places you spent your money. And it all starts with a shift in mentality that God owns it, I just manage it. And the reality is, it's a true statement. God owns it. You know God owns it, right? I mean, you look throughout the Bible, and we're told time and time again that God owns our finances, and not just our finances, but God owns everything in the earth. You look at Haggai chapter 2, and this is what the Lord says. He says, the silver is mine and the gold is mine. That was their finances. That was their money, the silver and gold. He says, that silver and gold, it's mine, says the Lord of the heavens army. You go to 1 Chronicles, and it's not just the money, but it's everything. 1 Chronicles says, everything in the heavens and on earth is yours, O Lord. And this is your kingdom. We adore you as the one who is over all things. It's this idea and this mentality that God, if you created everything, you created everything in heaven and on earth, then it all belongs to you. It's yours, and you are still over it. You still have dominion over it. You still have sovereignty over it. It's all yours, and it doesn't belong to some other kingdom. It doesn't belong to governments. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to you. 1 Corinthians echoes the same thing when the Apostle Paul says this. The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it. The earth, everything. The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it. God owns everything. I was trying to teach my son this a few weeks ago. We're trying to get outside more with the 100-degree weather. We think that's a great idea. So we're trying to get outside more and let's get a hammock so that we can put the hammock in the shade. And so I bought this hammock off of Amazon, and it came in. We hung it up on some trees, and we're just hammocking out there. And I just use these opportunities just to dump theology on my 8-year-old. And so he and I are just swinging on this hammock, and we're looking at all the trees and the nature. And I'm like, Ben, did you know God, he created all this? Like the trees and the grass and the creek and the birds that you hear chirping. Like God made it all. God made the clouds. He made the sky and the stars. And it's all his and it all belongs to him. And so it matters how we treat God's stuff. And we want to care for it. And he's like just absorbing it and taking it in. He's like, yeah, God made everything. And he made this hammock. And I'm like, kind of, China made the hammock. And then he's like, and God gave us the hammock. And I'm like, oh, actually, I just bought the hammock. I'm like, this wasn't a Santa Claus thing. This was me. I got this for us. But that's the mentality that we bring to all of our things sometimes. In fact, one of the objections we have, and tell me that some of you aren't thinking this, is that, okay, I know God made it. I know God created it. And I know, okay, everything is owned by God, but he may own it, but I earned it. Tell me some of you aren't thinking that. He owns it, but I earned it. I'm the one who put in the hours. When it comes to what's in my bank account, God didn't clock in and clock. I clocked in. I worked hard, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. I made sacrifices for this. I got an education, so I worked hard. I put blood, sweat, and tears in this. And God, he's just off in the distance watching it all happen. So, okay, maybe God owns it, but I earned it. Can I tell you this? That God has been dealing with that mentality and that objection for many centuries. In fact, one of the first times that he dealt with this, it was with his chosen people, the nation of Israel. The nation of Israel, as you know, were enslaved in Egypt for 400 years, and they pray out to God, God, save us and give us our own land, give us our freedom. And so God frees them from Egypt. He brings them to this land flowing with milk and honey. It's got resources out the wazoo. And they're just getting ready to cross the river to claim this inheritance. And God pauses them at the river, and he gives them a little bit of a warning because he knows what's going to happen to them once they gain all the possession, once they gain all the resources. He knows that they're going to think that they did something to earn that or to gain it. And so in Deuteronomy chapter 8, this is what God tells his people. He says, when you have become full and prosperous and have built fine homes to live in, Come on, tell me that doesn't sound like us. When you have become full and prosperous and have built fine homes to live in, and when your flocks and herds have become very large and your silver and gold have multiplied, along with everything else, be careful. Now, he doesn't say that's a sin. He doesn't say welcome that. He doesn't say be grateful for that. He doesn't say give it all away. He just says, just be careful. Do not become proud at that time and forget the Lord your God, who rescued you from slavery in the land of Egypt. And then he goes on to say this, answering the objection that many of us have. It says, God did all this so that you would never say to yourself, I have achieved this wealth with my own strength and my own energy. Remember the Lord your God. He is the one who gives you power to be successful. You know, we often think that it's our power that gained us what we have, that it's our skills that gained us what we have, that it's our wisdom that gained us what we have. It's our hard work, the hours, the blood, sweat, and tears that we put in that gained us what we have. But what God tells us there is that don't forget that all that you have is because of the strength and the energy that God gave you. Which means that God is the one who gave you the skills. God is the one who provided the job for you. God is the one who answered your prayer for that job. I think it's funny how we often get into this mentality of need when we're in this moment of need and we pray to God and we're like, God, I just need this opportunity. I just need this job. Or God, I pray that you provide for my future. We pray ahead. God, give me the career that I desire. Or give me an opportunity to support my family. And then what does God do? God shows up. He gives us opportunity. He gives us skill. He gives us careers. He blesses us with finances. And then we come to God and say, God, look what I have done with my own hands and my own skill and my own strength. And God's like, don't forget. Don't forget the prayers you prayed. Who gave you those skills? Who gave you the time? Who gave you the opportunity? It was God. Everything we have, this is the truth, everything we have is because of the graciousness and the generosity of God. Amen, church? Everything you have is because of the graciousness and generosity of God. It's all God's. He just lets us steward and manage it for a time. Now, if we're supposed to manage it, what does he want us to do with it? How does he want us to manage it? So we have to change our mentality to understand that God owns it, but if we're going to steward well and manage it well, we need to change something else. We need to do this. We need to change our priority. And this is how we need to change our priorities, is that we need to put God first. Say it with me, church. Put God first. And I'll tell you this is God's desire for you in every single area of your life. Every area. God wants to be put first in every area of your life. When it comes to your marriage, God wants you to put him over your spouse. When it comes to your career, God wants to be over your career. He wants to be put first in that. When it comes to your family and your kids, God wants to be put first in that. And when it comes to your finances, surprise, hopefully it doesn't surprise you, but God wants to be put first in your finances as well. There's a biblical principle for putting God first in finances, and it's a dirty word for a lot of people. And I know you're going to groan here, but this is a biblical principle, and it's called tithing. We just had 30 people walk out if you're online. I'm just kidding. No, you guys know tithing. You know what tithing is. It's a biblical principle, but unfortunately, it's become a dirty word in today's culture just because of the ways it has been misused by a lot of health and wealth gospel churches of, just give. And if you will give to the church, then we'll use that to raise the level of life standards for the pastors and all those things, and we'll let everybody else suffer, and I just need you to give so that you can give to the pastor. And churches have misused it. Churches have gotten into a lot of justified trouble because of that. And so what we've done as churches often is we've distanced ourselves from a biblical principle because of the way it has been misused. But if we look at it as a mentality of it's us putting God first, it's hard for me to distance myself from that. I mean, as hard as it is for me to talk about it, it's not hard for me to do it. My family, we tithe because we know that we want to put God first in our finances. And so one of the things that we do is we talk about tithing here at Harvester Christian Church every few years. And so what we do, though, is we get a lot of questions on what tithing is. In fact, I was in the living room a few weeks ago, and a young family came back. They'd just gotten married and trying to start their life on the right foot, and they came back to meet me. And that was the question they asked of like, hey, glad to be at Harvester. What does tithing mean? How do you tithe? Like, we want to start off right as a young couple, and I'm looking at them, I'm like, no guests ever ask about tithing. Like, that's not the question they want to have. Usually when you know that tithing is going to be the conversation, that's the weekend you don't invite guests to church. But this is something that the guest was like, we want to put God first in every area of our life, and we know that there's this thing called tithing. We just don't hear a lot about it, and so what does that look like? And so what I want to do is I just want to answer 4 questions when it comes to tithing. There's 4 common questions that I hear all the time, and the first one is this. First question is, what counts as a tithe? What counts as a tithe? Like, what is tithing exactly? It's a word that we don't use in society. It seems to only be used in church. So how would we define that church word? Well, I think a great way to define it is through the Bible. Here's how the Bible defines tithing. Tithing is giving the first 10% of your income back to God. It's giving the first 10% of your income back to God. In fact, the word tithe, it literally means 10%. So if you tithe, you're giving 10%, and you're giving it back to God, because it's this idea that it belonged to God in the first place. He gave me 100% of everything I have, and I give 10% of that income as it comes in back over to God. Now, what this means is 2% is not tithing, 9% is not tithing, 8% is not tithing, 10% is tithing. That is the biblical definition for tithing. Now, anybody in here just stink at math like me? All right, this is how I showed my kids how to find out how to tithe, okay? We use a little chart, and all I tell them to do is to remove a 0, and what's left over, that's what goes back to God. So if you make $100 through babysitting in a month, then I tell my kids then, remove a 0, and that's what you give very first. Like, before you buy body sprays from Bed Bath and Beauty Works or wherever they come from, or before you buy QT sodas, you give $10 to God, and then you get the other $90 to spend however you want to and manage however you want to. But that's what God's asked. If you want to put Him first in finances, give the first 10% back to God. Now, most of you probably make more than $100. So let's just keep going down here. If you get a $1,000 check for your income, payday comes, $1,000, remove a 0, and what's 10% of that? 100. I'm doing the math for you. You don't have to, I'm not lying to you on that. That's what it equals. If you make $10,000, you get a $10,000 check and you want to tithe and put God first in it, you remove a 0 and it's 1,000. All right, you tracking with me? Now, $1 million, let's say you get $1 million, you move a 0 and 10% of that is $100,000, how you give back to God and put God first. Now, I know what a lot of you are feeling right now. You're feeling the tension and the anxiety set in, aren't you? You felt no tension and anxiety when I was talking about my daughter and her $10, though, did you? Because you're like, $10, what are you going to spend that? That's like a half a gallon of gas right now. What are you going to spend that on? Sure, God, here's $10 back. But then the farther along you get, the more money you're like, 100, okay, 1,000? I can never imagine giving $100,000. Some of you are feeling that pressure. And the reason you feel that way is because you look at that and you're like, man, what I could do with that. Man, I could pay off my house. I could pay off my car. I can put it, like, what I could do with that. And it's this idea of like, man, God, if I gave that over to you and you had that, but I want to, this is mine, what I could do with that. And the reality is, and the statistics will show this, that the people who are most likely to tithe are those who make the least. Those who are most faithful in putting God first in this area of life and in finances are those who make the least. And the more we make, the more we start doing the math, and the more we start putting our numbers in spreadsheets, we begin to think, oh man, I'm sure God would be just as happy with that instead. And you know what we become? Instead of becoming tithers, what we become is tippers. That's what eventually happens. And you know what a tip is, right? A tip is what you give to someone when they serve you well. I think that's what we're doing to God, a lot of us. Say, God, you did me a solid, so here's a 5. Or here's 100. Or I'm not gonna tithe, but I will tip God. But can I tell you this? God does not serve you. God does not serve. If we're going to put God first, one of the ways that we do that is putting him first in every area of our lives, including our finances. So what counts as a tithe? That's what a tithe is, but maybe this other question is one that you're asking. It's one that I hear a lot is, what do I do with the tithe? Where do I give my tithe? I've had this question asked as well of people who are generous and like, yes, that's what I want to do. Now, can I split it up in these variety of ways? Like I want to give like the church 3%. I want to give this organization, the United Way, 3%. I want to give 3% to the people that I see on the streets. I want to give this extra. That's 1% to as a Christmas gift to somebody else. And one of the things we ask is like, where do we give the tithe? What's the biblical example for that? In the Bible, we see 2 examples of where to give that tithe. Not just what a tithe is, but where to give it. In the Old Testament, we see that the Old Testament community gave it to the storehouses. Throughout the Old Testament, you'll see, bring your tithe to the storehouses, which was a place at the temple. It was the center of the religious community. And everybody in the religious community would bring their 10% to the storehouse, and it would be stored at a room in the temple, and then that would be used to care for and minister to the community and those people who are on the fringes of the community as well. Now, by the time you get to the New Testament, the temple has kind of taken a back seat in the church world, and so they're not really going there to worship. They're more worshiping in congregational settings and in home settings. And so they don't bring the tithe to the storehouse. It says in the book of Acts that they bring the tithe to the apostles' feet. Instead of taking it to the temple, they'd bring it to the apostles' feet, and they would drop it there, and then the apostles, the leaders of the church, would then use it to care for the community, to see the needs of the community, meet those needs of the community and the surrounding community as well. And the key to this is that they would bring their tithe, they would drop it off, and they would let God do what God wants to do with it. Here's the mentality I think some of us get. It's like, yes, I want to be generous. I want to give. But I will give if I get to choose how it's spent. How many of us have that mentality? Of like, man, I really want to give, but if I'm going to give in this way, then I need it to be spent in these various, I'm going to designate how you spend it. And what we want to do is we want to keep control over it still. We want to keep control over it. And so one of the things that our family does is we tithe. We give our first 10%, but I believe part of the tithe is an exercise in letting go of control, of like, this isn't mine, this is God's, I'm giving it, I'm losing control. But then the things that are important into my heart, I give above and beyond for those things. There's some things that my wife and I, we support some other organizations and some other missions and some other needs in our city, and we support those as a way of saying, all right, here's the extra generous offerings that we want to give. But the tithe, we turn it over and we lose control of it. Where do I give? You give to God, and you lose control. I know that makes some people comfortable, because we'd much rather have control of things, because I think we own it. Where do I give my tithe? Bring it to the apostles' feet. Bring it to the local congregation that you're a part of. Number 3, third question here. This is a big one. Do I tithe off my net or gross income? We're getting into the weeds now, okay? We're getting into the weeds now. Do I tithe off my net or gross income? For those of you who are younger and do not have jobs yet, there is a sad reality coming to you. You thought 100% of what you make was yours. That is not true. Do I tithe off of net or gross? The question is basically, if I'm going to give 10%, I'm going to calculate that. Do I calculate it off of what I got total or my net, which is after what Uncle Sam took away? And can I tell you this? Uncle Sam wants more than what God wants, okay? He's taking more than what God is asking of you. And so people often ask, well, what do I tithe off of, net or gross? Let me give you the biblical example, or a biblical answer to that. There isn't one. The IRS does not exist in the Bible. Praise God. Anybody? Amen. Loudest applaud of the day. There. The IRS doesn't exist, and so there's no really conversation of net or gross. That wasn't really an issue they dealt with there. And so when it comes to this, you just got to pray to God. You got to come and let you and the Holy Spirit work some things out. I'll tell you what my wife and I do. My wife and I, we used to tithe off of our net, and we did that for a long time. And then we decided, you know what? Uncle Sam is taking a lot, and a lot is coming out of that before to go to health care or retirement or whatever it happens to be. And so if we're going to give our first 10%, then we're going to start tithing off of gross. And so we started doing that many years ago, of just looking at the gross and saying we're going to tithe off of that, because what we wanted to do is we wanted to honor God, not just by giving 10%, but we wanted to honor God by giving our first 10%. And so we've done that by giving off of gross. We've also done that by scheduling our tithe to be taken immediately out of our check for the very first thing on payday. That's the first thing that we see on our statement, is that 10% of it went back to the church. It's not our mortgage that came first. It's not our taxes that came first. It wasn't our groceries that came first. It was our tithe. But that's a conversation that you and God need to have. Fourth one is this, and this will be the final question. And I think this is one that many more longtime Christians ask, many more people who are a little bit more negative in this area or critical in this area. I hear this question from them usually. Nikomas, isn't tithing just an Old Testament practice? Jesus says nothing about it, and so we shouldn't make it something that we talk about. We should leave that in the Old Testament. Jesus says nothing, and so all we're supposed to do is give with a generous heart, which is true. Give with a generous heart. Jesus doesn't want your curmudgeon money. He wants your finances, and he wants to be first in your heart. But people will say that, like Jesus never talks about it, and so I'm not going to do it, and you shouldn't present that as a biblical principle anymore. The very first thing I usually want to do is just like examine the heart of that person, of like why would that be the question? What kind of pain do they have there? How have they seen churches misuse it? That's usually where it comes from. They've just seen someone misuse and twist this principle for their own benefits. And can I tell you that if you think Harvester's here to twist you into doing something to build up Harvester's kingdom, I wish you would stay around Harvester a little bit longer and know that that's not our heart. But here's the question I would have for that person, though. If Jesus were to come before you today, look you square in the eyes, and tell you, you should tithe, how would you respond to him? Okay, you say he doesn't say it in the New Testament, but if he would to look you in the eyes and he would say that, I want you to tithe, how would you respond to him? Would you argue back? Would you debate him? Would you pull out your Bible and say, no, look at the Bible, Jesus? Or would you be obedient? My guess is most of us who love Jesus, we would be obedient to him if he said that we should tithe. The reality is, in Matthew chapter 23, Jesus tells us that. We're just quick to overlook it. It's in the story, he's talking to some Pharisees, some religious people who have this hardness of heart, and they want to look good on the outside, even though their heart is corrupt on the inside. And these religious leaders, they're actually really good at tithing. In fact, they're really good at tithing in front of everybody. They want everybody to know that they tithe. And then they go back to their homes or they go back to their communities and they don't care for people, and they're not standing up for injustices. They're being unmerciful towards others. They're not caring for the people in their community. And so Jesus comes to them and he says this in Matthew chapter 23, verse 23. Talking to these Pharisees, he says, "You are careful to tithe even the tiniest income from your herb gardens." So that was how they received their income at that time. They would bring in the herbs and then they would sell that. And he says, you tithe off of that. Like the tiniest, you get one little herb and you give 10% away. But you ignore the more important aspects of the law: justice, mercy, faith. And then Jesus, looking them in the eye, says this: you should tithe, yes, but do not neglect the more important things. he says, you're nailing it on this one aspect of putting God first in your finances. You're doing great at that. You should do that. You should tithe. But you know what you also need to do? Care for people and love people and be generous and merciful to people. Essentially, Jesus says, do both of those. I think if he were to look at us, most of the times he would say, man, you guys are merciful. You care for people, you stand for injustices, but you're also neglecting putting God first in your own life, in your own pocketbook. Really what this all comes down to is just an area of lordship with Jesus. Do we want to put God first in every area of our lives? Do we really want to? This is the area where I think most of us in our society struggle with putting God first. It's not in our time, it's not in our service, it's not in our hearts sometimes, it's not in our interactions with other people. I think for some reason in our society, this idea of mind your own business is ingrained into our hearts. And the question I have for you today is, are you okay if God minds your business? You should mind your business in every area of your life. You should mind your business when it comes to your marriage. He should mind your business when it comes to your family, when it comes to your career, and when it comes to your finances as well. Here's what I want to do. I want to wrap up just by challenging you today. And I'm not going to challenge you to give right now. We're not going to pass the baskets. That's not what's getting ready to happen. I'm not going to tweak anything and do this so that we can fill up a bucket for anything. What I want to do is just challenge you to pray this week. Every few years, like I mentioned, we have this conversation about tithing for Harvester Christian Church members and family members. And it ends, and we're going to do this next week, with just an opportunity for you to commit to putting God first in the area of finances. So next week, I'm going to ask you to commit to that. And you don't have to. We're not going to force that on anybody. We're not going to ask you how much or dollars or figures or anything like that. We're not really interested in that number, but what we are interested in is knowing, is Harvester Christian Church members, our sons and daughters of God that attend here, do we put God first in this area? And so what I want you to do today and over the next 7 days is just pray. Can you commit to that? Wherever you stand on this, just pray. And just ask God this question. God, do I put you first in every area of life? God, do I put you first in every area of life? And maybe follow it up with a second question. God, why is it hard for me to put you first in this area? And I don't know what that answer is for you, but I think it's worth a conversation with God, with the Holy Spirit, examining your heart, examining the heart of God, examining maybe some wounds from the past. Harvester, will you commit to praying?